You are live.
Wow.
Hello, Lucy.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well.
Good.
Lucy Herd from Grief and a Cuppa. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. And thank you so much for taking the time to be here, because it's a really, really important topic of conversation in both of our lives. That's definitely worth having. And I'm really glad that we've got time to have a talk, because
I know
talking is good, isn't it?
talking is good, and we don't talk about grief and bereavement as much as we should do, because we find some people find it awkward to talk about it. I think it's probably one of the last taboo subjects, really, that we do find difficult to talk about. And I think, like I've said to you, it doesn't matter whether it's 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 16 years, 60 years, grief is grief, and it can affect you at any point, and no one grieves the same. Everyone's different. It's
You're
unique to
absolutely
you.
right. You're absolutely right. We've both experienced a form of grief in our own lives individually, and of course, it affects not just you but everyone. In my case, I lost my mum about nearly 20 years ago. In fact, next February would be 20 years. She was waiting for an organ donor, an organ transplant for kidneys, because hers were not working. And she had a fantastic 10 years of life with we call it like a lease for life, where she had dialysis, which of course is quite cumbersome on the body. But we had a great time as a family during that time, because we always tried to stay positive. But that was, nearly 20 years ago. And it does take a long time to navigate your path and find out really what's happened with you mentally. But it's also okay to talk about it, and that's why we're here.
I was going to say, what was your mum's name?
My mum's name was Answer, and her name in the UK was Answer, and her name in Kuwait, where she grew up, was Sabiha, and her last name was Noor, and Noor means light. So in fact, with me, whenever these days, because I try to turn it into a positive, whenever I look outside and I see the sun, I say, sun's out, mum's out.
That's beautiful. Wow.
I believe it. I truly believe it.
No, perfect. Yeah,
How,
no, that's so. Had she always had were her kidneys always an issue from a very young age, or was this something that?
no, in fact, we were. I think my siblings and my dad, we were just plodding along normally as a family in an Asian household, like you do, being very loud and very loud. I think at the age of 14 or 15, she came home one day when I was around that age and said to us all, I need a transplant. And we probably didn't quite understand what that meant at the time. We knew that she wasn't well. We knew that she was waiting for a replacement kidney, but we didn't realize back then that being an Asian from a minority group meant that it's actually quite hard to find a match, because it's actually better to get a match, if you can, from someone from a similar background to you, because the chances of rejection are lower. Mm-hmm. So we spent from the age of 15 to 25, 10 years. She would have been 39 and just turned 40. Yeah. And so for 10 years, then she passed away just when she was 4 days into, well, just slightly into her 50th birthday. So I don't think that's particularly early in life to know that you need a donor, an organ transplant, at the age of 40. I'd say it's kind of, kind of round. Actually, I'm 44, so I'd say this is sort of middle age. You there? I think you're frozen. Okay. We've lost Lucy. She's back.
She's back again.
I'm hoping you heard everything I said. So
yes, living in a Victorian house.
Right.
The walls are very thick.
Okay.
Although sometimes I think with lockdown and everything else, I'm just convinced, because everybody is online now.
This is true.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. Yes. So you were 25 when she died.
That's right. Yeah. It's funny, I haven't talked about it for a really long time, and you're you're getting me to talk, which is good. Is exactly why we're here. Yeah. So for about 50, from 15 to 25, we had a very intense time. She spent a long time going to hospital, to the dialysis unit in Reading, because I grew up in Reading at the Royal Berkshire Hospital. That's where she went. And
maybe we should tell people how we know each other.
Yes, we should. Please do. Go for it.
So we met at a drama group when we were, so it must have been, well, about 15, 16 then. So your mum hadn't, so it was a very sort of, you just sort of discovered what was happening. So at a time of our lives when you're 15, 16, when teenagers, but we had lots of fun. And I remember just giggling and laughing lots and getting up to lots of mischief.
Yes, but it was a really, really good outlet, actually, going to drama school together, because
yeah, I can imagine it. Well, for you, it must have been. It was did it feel away from it all, or did it feel that was your time, or because all your siblings went, didn't they?
Yes, it was absolutely a brilliant time, because you get to meet lots of people. It's kind of escapism. You can just be fun and silly, and also you grow
and you meet people
like you.
Yes.
I was really surprised when you got in touch, in fact, just recently, because I've only started coaching recently, and you got in touch because
I was interested in what you were doing, and I wanted to catch and reconnect. I think that's the word we use nowadays. We wanted to reconnect,
and it's been that we did.
So 20 years. So can I ask a question?
Of course, 20 years. Ask away. So
has it gone by fast? Does it feel like it's gone by fast?
No.
Does it not?
No.
So for me, my I'll tell a bit about people. So my son Jack, he was 23 months old, and he tragically died in 2010. So that's 10 years. And for me, 10 years, maybe it'll be different in 20 years, but this is why it's so important to talk about, because everyone deals differently with grief. So for 10 years, it's flown by. It feels really like I've blinked and 10 years is here. So it's really interesting to speak to you when you say 20 years. So another 10 years for me. What will it feel like? Will it feel like it's a long time ago? Yeah, it's just interesting. So that's why I say talking about grief and bereavement is so important, because we all react and all deal with it so differently. And I think one of the things I mentioned to you is that you can't make a bereaved person any sadder than they already are. But saying nothing can actually have more of an impact on somebody than saying nothing at all. Yeah, it is. Even if you're turning around to someone and saying, I haven't got a clue what to say, well, that's okay. We're learning this feelings of what we're going through as well. So yeah, so it'd be interesting. Maybe we should have a conversation in 10 years' time.
Let's do it. Let's plug it in.
To see. But no, so it must have been must have been hard. And did you and I said the whole family, you must have all dealt with it very differently, or were you quite similar? Or
you're probably right. I have a twin sister, an older brother, and a younger brother. And of course, we were at different ages. I was 25, so was my twin sister. My younger brother was 21, and my older brother was 5 years older. No, 3 years older. You can't really talk about the degree or the depth at which it affects everybody.
No,
everybody's individual. But I do have a particular soft sort of spot for my younger brother, because he was the youngest. And I had my twin sister, and we both yabba chat a lot. My older brother, of course, was like the eldest, so he kind of played a different role. He was certainly there strongly in supporting his siblings, as we all were. We were like a unit. Like we always used to say, take 4 straws, and together they're really strong. That's what we saw ourselves as. And I think we were very fortunate that as a family, we really communicated very well. And we were also very lucky to have really supportive relatives and cousins, family around us. And the community, the Asian community, was also really, really supportive at the time, because my mum was very present in it.
Family is important, and friends and family, very important. So for me, on the side of things, I don't know whether you found this, but I lost people. So I lost friends. I haven't spoken to some of my friends for a very long time. But at the time, I felt quite hurt and angry. But I think now it's because they were grieving too. And because we all deal with it so differently, they didn't know how to be around me. So I think that I've looked back on that. And you hear a lot of stories that people cross the road rather than speak to you because they don't know what to say. So whether it's a cultural thing, I don't know. I've got no idea. I think it's just generally people, because I think communities are really important. I went to, so I went to church. I was part of a church community, but it was how different people react to things. It's just it's fascinating.
Well, okay. I think your perception is right. People probably were grieving too. Obviously, it's not nice being at the receiving end of watching someone cross the road, but it could simply be that, like, they didn't know what to say or didn't.
Absolutely.
We're weak. It's sometimes harder because you don't know what that person went through or is going through. My message would be to anyone watching: if you do see someone, and if you're strong enough and brave enough, reach out to them, even if it's just a nod. They can come over or not, but I would say to do something is probably better than to do nothing.
I had a hand signal.
Yes, exactly. Little
so
wave.
So people would say, some people that didn't know what to say, they'd sort of go, okay, and I'd go, if I sort of went so it was a gesture. So that having that communication to let people know, because people don't know what to say sometimes, and that's okay as well. But I think that's why breaking down the taboo around grief and bereavement is so important, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that might be supporting a friend that has experienced bereavement or is actually going it through themselves, but they don't know how to get across that they might need someone to talk to or a little bit of support.
Yeah. So to answer your question, it might be a cultural thing. So in my case, obviously I'm from the Asian community, and where I grew up in Reading, there was a really good Asian community. The women were really supportive of each other, and my aunties and cousins also were super fantastic. And perhaps because my mum had an illness for a fairly long period of time, everybody knew what was happening and could dip in and out of a conversation or to check up on us or her if they wanted to. That was probably the key difference, because even though the inevitable, you never imagine it's going to happen, it did happen, which is that eventually her lease for life ended. But until that point, we just really lived with her having an illness. So perhaps because it was going on for quite a while, people always checked in on us and talked to us, as opposed to it being sudden. Maybe.
I exactly. I think that's the difference. I said that me being was a sudden thing, and not that it makes grief any different in that kind of way. It's a different way of coping and dealing with things. But no, wow.
Look at now. So that's back then, which is just horrific what happened. Look at now. Look at what you've done and what you've achieved in the meantime. Certainly from my end, I know that when my mother passed away, I wrote to the Times an article. They published it, and I had written in there, this is what happened, and my mother needed an organ transplant, and that people should carry the organ donor card. Wouldn't it be great if there was an opt-out system and the law changed? And it's taken nearly 20 years. But then you got in touch, and you're talking about Jack. Tell us about Jack's Law, what you've been doing.
Well, yeah, so when Jack died, I discovered that there was no law to say that employers had to give you time off from work. So if your employer said you could have 24 hours off, then you could have 24 hours off. If your employer said you couldn't take any time off, then you couldn't take any time off. It was there was no law to protect you. And so I started a campaign. So I suppose my way of channeling my healing with grief and bereavement was campaigning. And I campaigned for nearly 10 years to try and better protect people from being told they couldn't take time off from work. So initially, when I started it out, it was for everybody. So whether it had been a parent or a sibling or a grandparent or auntie and uncle, whatever it might have been, a child, that I believe that everyone should be able be given time at any point, because some people want to go back to work straight away, and that's absolutely fine. But at some point, like I said, it doesn't matter whether it's 6 days, it could be 6 years. At some point, grief is going to hit you, and you do need to take that time to do what it is you have to do. So as of April this year, so 2020, so just into lockdown, well, a month into lockdown, Jack's Law was created. So it was it's for parents that lose a child under the age of 18, and that includes stillbirth as well, to take time off if they need to, and they're allowed to have 2 weeks. But my campaigning hasn't stopped. I still truly believe that people should be able to take off time when they need to if they lose a sort of immediate family member. But then it can get into, I think everyone should. So it doesn't matter if you're fostered or adoptive, or your grandparent might be like a mother, or your auntie or your best friend might be like a mother figure to you. I think if you've got a relationship, sort of the family dynamics has changed so much in this day and age. You should be able to take time off. So yeah, so campaigns. But when you told me about the opt-in and opt-out, and that you wrote a letter, have you still got the letter?
I've still got the letter. I could take a photo of it and post it in the comments on Facebook, on my Facebook page later.
Did you ever get a reply?
No, they just published it in the Times newspaper. But it was really good to write. It was really good to write, and
it was an avenue to put it. You felt that you needed to do something, and exactly. I think that's what it is. Yeah, it was channeling something that you felt unjust about, that you put your words to, and wow, and now it is that the fact that you have to. Yes, yeah, so everyone's automatically opted in, isn't that right? And you have to let them know if you want to opt out.
That's what I understand. Yes, and in my community, the Asian community, it's even more prevalent, or the Black and Asian community, because the number of people who carry a donor card is less. And now,
really?
Yes, which is a shame. I do remember at the gathering after the funeral of my mother, sitting with the women, a lot of women from all over the world. I'm not joking, like Kuwait, Jordan, Yemen, different countries.
Wow.
Coming over and talking and being really supportive. But there was a hang up about it, which was there was definitely a hang up about the idea of donating organs, and that it's not the right thing to do. And I felt incredibly upset, but also compelled to write to the Times just to say, people reading this, you know, if you needed an organ, you'd take it, wouldn't you? So put yourself in those shoes. If you imagine a family member needing one, just visualize that. God forbid it would happen, but it is happening more and more. If you can put yourself in the shoes of someone who might need a kidney or an organ, even if it's you, then just think a little wider than the eyes that you're looking through, because the difference is huge, the impact is huge. And you know, carrying 7 organs that you're not going to need after you've passed away, in my opinion, will save 7 lives. How can that not be good?
It's funny because one of my friends, she's an organ donation nurse.
Really?
And so I had a really intense conversation about it, because I wasn't given the option. They didn't ask me. In fact, did they? They might have asked me whether I wanted to donate Jack's organs, but I think, but I can't remember. But I didn't go down that avenue. I think because I hadn't had the education about it. So it's really interesting what you said about organ donation. People almost think about the worst side of things, if you see what I mean. So not the fact that you're going to be helping somebody. So, and she was explaining to me that's what she does. She talks to families about what organ donation is.
Brilliant.
So it's there are people out in the sort of NHS and things that actually this is their job. They specialize in helping families understand about organ donation. So it was an interesting subject. And so when you said you written to the Times,
yes,
all those years ago, a fellow campaigner. That's what I'm thinking. A fellow campaigner.
Thing we have in common. So we started off being in the same theatre group. We both experienced major losses, and but both I mean, I'm not campaigning the same way you are, but the message is always there, and
it is.
you can never stop trying to encourage people to do good. And I think in your case, what you're doing is fantastic because it's so raw and it's so fresh what people are going through when they experience grief. And you have this group called Grief and Cuppa. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, so grief and there's all sorts of things. So the Grief and Cuppa was a concept I set up because before Jack died, I was that girl that people used to come around to my house and we'd get the big yellow teapot out and I'd fill it with tea and we'd all sit around and we'd chat and we'd natter. That's what it was. My grandmother always used to say a problem shared was a problem halved. And I truly believe that. I think talking to somebody else might have a different, they didn't even have to say anything. I think sometimes you just need to get the words out and we can find that quite difficult. So when Jack died and I was going through everything that I was going through, I stopped having cups of tea in my yellow teapot and I didn't have the energy to do it anymore. And then it was almost like an epiphany, I suppose. So one of the things I've learned over the 10 years, as like I said to you, people crossing the road, people turning around and saying, aren't you over that? All these sort of concepts, that happened 6 years ago. Aren't you over that yet? But in reality, that is what people hear. And I thought, well, if that's how I'm feeling, is there anybody else out there that is going through the same sort of thing? So I came up with the sort of the creation of Grief and Cuppa. So it's a community based what's the word I'm looking for? Event. There we go, event. And anyone that it's available for anyone that's bereaved. It doesn't matter how long ago you've been bereaved. It doesn't matter what type of bereavement you've had. I did think, do I do it just for the death of a child, death of a parent, death of a grandparent? But actually, no, grief is grief. And it's worked really well. So before lockdown, I used to go to coffee shops and have a little pop-up grief cafe. Okay. And we'd I love cake. Jack's first word was cake. So we have cups of tea and coffee, and it's a peer support group. So I suppose it's run by the bereaved for the bereaved, and it's worked really well. So when lockdown happened, I'm now having to do them online. And I was a bit worried, thinking, oh, is it going to work? But there haven't been as many, but it seems to be working okay. And it's just a place for people to come talk about their loved ones. And we don't just talk about doom and gloom stuff. We talk about all sorts of things. It's building up friendships, I think, and that connection with each other, that you're not alone and you don't have to grieve alone.
I like what you said there. So first of all, if you could put a link in the comments box on the Facebook page when we finish, that would be great. So if anyone wants to join the group who watches this later, then they can click on it and access you.
And join the group. Yeah, no, that would be amazing. Yeah, I think with the good thing about being on Zoom or sort of social this side of things is that anyone around the world can have one. And actually, we've got my first Grief and Cuppa is going to Northamptonshire. So I said people can pop, but the dream is that everyone can set up a Grief and Cuppa in their area, anywhere in the globe, and have somewhere where it's a community based where we can all talk about grief and bereavement. So the model really, it can be anywhere. It doesn't matter.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So,
secondly, you also said you don't always have to be sad and talk about doom and gloom. And I think that's really, really important because both of us have experienced losses. And look at us, we're smiling, we're laughing, we're trying to live in life and move on, as in we're never going to forget what's happened. Nobody does, ever. And there are moments where you crack and you feel sad and you talk. And that's
okay.
Exactly, that's okay. And from my end, it's like I'm a mindset coach. So it took a long time for me because I was drifting probably for the first 5 years as if a bag of apples had just fallen out of a broken bag and just spent my time picking them up, trying to put my life back together. But after a while, something shifted and it made me realize this sadness won't go away, but it's okay to be in life and to live it. And so that's where I think it's really important to be able to say if you feel ready, when you're ready, because for everybody that's different, it's okay to say sort of enough now. I'm going to live my life for myself, for my family, for whoever it's important to me, my cats, my parents, friends. I'm going to not just drift through life. I'm going to be in it. I'm going to be present, and I'm going to try and do it with a positive outlook, because I'm on this earth for a really short time, and I'm going to make the most of it. I'm going to make the most of the time I have, and I'm going to try and be positive, navigate a path for myself, and come out feeling good. And that's okay too. I don't think it's bad to say. I mean, of course, I had this feeling of, how can I go on now? And why should I feel happy? Of course, I don't feel happy. But there was a shift where in my head I was like, no, I'm all right now. I'm going to go out there and do the best I can in the world that I'm living under this big sky, because I deserve that, because I'm here. And that's equally important.
It is. And I think sometimes we get so lost with life and everything else. I think that's the work that you're doing with your mindset coach, helping people with how they tell you the way they focus and the positive side of things, and me with the grief and the bereavement side of things. It's to let people know that you're not always going to feel the way you will feel. Somebody said to me, I remember when Jack died, not long after him, I'd known somebody, and I said to him, will I ever feel, will pain always be there? And he said, Lucy, he said, you will have good days and you will have bad days. He says, but I can promise you that you will learn to laugh and smile without feeling guilty. And I remember at the time thinking, how am I ever going to learn to laugh and smile without feeling guilty? But I did. And I do smile and I do laugh, and I don't feel guilty about it anymore. It's not that, it's just the way that it is that it's just finding joy. I know I found joy again, and there will be people possibly watching this that haven't got joy in their lives, but then there are people around the world that can help them with that.
Exactly.
And so with the work that you do and the work that I do, hopefully we can help those people get to a place where they feel joy and they can laugh and smile without feeling guilty, because we all like a good giggle.
We do indeed, and we're all worth it.
Yeah, we'll get with our big hair.
We are all worth it. We are. Everyone comes into the world. Everybody leaves the world. So there will be moments of joy and there will be moments of sadness. But
that's okay.
Okay. We're on the same. Lucy,
yeah.
Thank you so much. If there's anything else you'd like to say to anyone who's going to watch this or is watching this, what would it be?
Be gentle on yourselves and just remember to breathe. So when you've had moments where you just can't do anything else, just take that time just to breathe. I say that one of the things I quite a lot of it up, just breathe. And I think just breathing those deep breaths 10 times, focusing on your breathing, can calm you naturally because of all the endorphins and things in your body. So, and look after yourself.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Love it. Thank you so much. It's
been a
pleasure.
Take care.
Keep in touch.
I will. Bye.
Bye.